Yes, I am Vanu Deschetti. I am the Director of Marketing and Sales for Aplusify, who we do Salesforce Managed Services. So we keep our clients in the association and nonprofit world, we keep their systems up to speed and working well. So let's get started today. I want to do a quick poll and see who we've got here and where you are in your budget cycle. So take a few seconds to complete this poll. Just want to know where you are and if you've actually thought about the cost to manage your AMS and CRM. Today, I'll be using Salesforce, using AMS, CRM, all in the same part. Even if you don't use Salesforce, these same lessons can apply. Let's see here. With that said, let me get our presentation up and running here. While you guys are taking that, my screens are running amok. Let's see here. While you guys are taking that, I would like to show you my screen. Let's see here. Let's share this one. Okay. And let's take a look at this poll. Let's see who we've got in the room. Okay. So I know most association nonprofits, they do their budget year in October, November. That's when it starts and goes into the new year. It seems like a lot of you have your budgets finalized and you're kind of looking for ways to make most out of that budget for the next year. And some of you are working on the budget. Let's see, let me share these results too. And then in terms of cost to manage your AMS CRM, it seems like a lot of you haven't accounted for it. So let's definitely go over a lot of that today of what things you need to look out for. You're not alone. It's a very frequently looked over. So we'll go over those. And then also looking for cost-effective ways. So great. It's good to have you all on board. Let's see here. Well, let's jump right into it. You know, I think of AMSs in Salesforce much like a house. It houses, my computer is running away with me. An AMS is very much like a house in the sense that it houses your data. There's a lot of accessories and equipments and upgrades you can do. And I really like this infographic from HomeAdvisor. It really hits home with the true cost of owning a home, not only buying a home with closing costs and assessment fees and all sorts of things, but also once you actually own that home, there's a lot of things that you need to take care of. So HomeAdvisor has this really nifty, handy infographic I wanted to share with you. And it's very much how you should think about your AMS in terms of thinking about those emergency costs. What disruption may happen? Of course, we don't want any disruption, and we don't want anything to go awry. Let's see here. It seems like I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Let's see. Usually I have a sidekick and I'm running the technical, I'm not giving the presentation, but let's see here. Bear with me while I get through these technical difficulties of my own. It's my own disruption. Okay, there we go. I think you see it now. But what I was saying is about these unexpected costs that you might have when you buy a home. So those are things that you want to think about. But then also upgrades that you want to do to your home. You want to buy a new fence, build a deck, or mow a lawn. Those are equivalent of wanting customization or wanting to get APIs into your ecosystem, into your Salesforce ecosystem. So very much of the same kind of thought process. So think about that when we're going through these costs, because there's a lot of similarities there. Now let's talk about what the total cost of ownership actually is. And according to Gartner, it's everything under the sun. But it's specifically what we are going to talk about today, it is about the management and the support that you need to not only get your system up and running, but also to maintain it and also make improvements and customizations along the way. Communications within your team, the end user expenses, and opportunity costs for downtime. So again, that disruption. And then of course, we've got training and other productivity costs. So all of those things should really be factored into your budget. That is the cost of ownership, the cost of management. Now, here are, if you want to break it down even further, you can see the data migration is a cost in and of itself. So whether you are getting a new system or a new system starting from scratch, you don't have a legacy system, you've got to put data into your Salesforce ecosystem. It has to come from somewhere, and someone has to do it. So whether it's staff, a consultant, or another third party, then that's a cost that you have to think about. Customization. A lot of times around with your AMS, your Salesforce, it's great. It gives you a great foundation, but you still have to make it your own. What custom objects do you need? What workflows? What triggers? All of those good things. And then cost of management, again, it's that cost to maintain that system that we talked about. Integration. Now, this is where, when we were talking about the house, you want a new fence, maybe add on a bump out to the house, or even a wine bar, or whatever it may be, any kind of upgrade that you want to do. That integration is the same thing as like an API. You're going to want to implement that, but not just flip on the switch, install it. There's a thought process that goes through a planning process where you've got to really think about your existing objects, your existing fields. How does that integration go? What's the process? So again, that's staff time and knowledge that you're tapping into. There's a cost to that. Now for training, that as well. So you not only have training for if you have a Salesforce administrator or a database coordinator, or even just staff, but think about for your members and for your donors, what you need to do to educate them on how to use your system. And then we talked a lot about cost of disruption, which is not my favorite, but we absolutely need to talk about that. So let's go on to the next. Actually, before we go on to disruption, let's go out to the spreadsheet. Does everybody have their spreadsheet? Hopefully we emailed that out to you guys today. And let me share my screen, and we'll actually go through this spreadsheet so you know what the fields are and how the calculations come about and why they are important. So let me share my Excel document. Okay. And I've lost my chat screen, so let me make sure I get that back. Okay, great. So first of all, on this, once you open your document, you're going to have a summary page. This will all fill out based on information that you put into the other sheets. And we want to start off with the second tab. It's called Cost of Management. So let's go here, and let me see if I can make it a little bigger. There we go. So what we have here, now this sheet is filled with all sorts of nifty little calculations and formulas to help you out. The first thing that is it's an obvious cost, but may not be within your IT budget. It may be set off in an HR budget. It may be set off in a marketing or membership budget. But in terms of thinking about all the costs surrounding your AMS, you really want to take a look at this. So here in the staff costs, you want to write down all the staff who are involved in your AMS. If you have a Salesforce administrator, if you have a database coordinator, or even someone in membership who's tasked with maintaining the database or input, doing data entry, make sure that information gets in here. So I'm going to just go ahead and fill out some information. Let's pretend that this organization, let's have a great day organization. They have staff number 1. Let's put that as a Salesforce administrator. And I will tell you, I never learned how to type. So my typing skills, don't judge my typos. Now, a Salesforce administrator who's certified typically runs anywhere between $90,000 to $120,000 a year. How do I know that? Salary.com is a great place to go to figure that out. If you're looking for just what industry salary averages are, you can check by your location, job title, experience. So that can give you kind of a baseline. But if you actually know what these costs are, you might want to just input that there so they're more real numbers to you and your organization. So here we have percentage of job dedicated to AMS CRM. So basically what this is asking for is how much of their job is focused and dedicated to the CRM, to the AMS. So for a Salesforce administrator, that's their job. That's 100%. So I'm just simply going to type in 100%, and I'm going to move on to the next one. I can either choose here an hourly rate or an annual rate. Now, let's say I know what the annual rate is. I'm just going to pick annual and just go here and put in what that annual salary is. And what this is calculating, this is just to calculate what that annual salary is. And since that job is 100%, this person's spending 100% of their job on Salesforce, their dedicated annual salary to the AMS CRM is $120,000. Now, let's say we actually have a database coordinator. Oh, even better. Let's do a membership coordinator. And their job, they only spend 50% of their time in Salesforce. And we know their hourly rate. We don't necessarily know their annual rate. So let's do that. And then their hourly salary is going to be, let's say it is $35 an hour. And it will automatically calculate the annual salary, which is 72.8. And then since their job is only 50% dedicated to AMS, it will calculate 50% of that annual salary. Now, one of the other things that a lot of times a lot of people forget about is when you hire employees, you have benefits that you've got to pay. Now, those benefits may vary from organization to organization, but on a national average, according to the Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics, they have determined that the average employee that gets benefits from an organization, that cost is $38.20 per hour. So we're going to use that as a baseline. Obviously, you can change that if you know that piece of information about your organization. And if you do, I'm impressed. I'm not quite sure I know what that is for myself. So you see here that this final total annual cost takes into consideration how much time they spent in Salesforce, what their annual salary is, adjusting that, how much time that they've spent in their annual salary, and how much they get in paid in benefits. So if this is the case with this organization, let's just keep it simple. We'll have 2 staff members. Then the total cost of management of Salesforce for those 2 staff members is over $275,000 a year. So that's just staffing. In today's conversation, we're going to focus really a lot on the labor, on the staffing component. All of the other costs in terms of all the other costs in terms of like licensing fees and how much it costs for the software, we're not going to think about that because most people already think about that. I really want to focus on the human element of all of this, because that is at the end of the day who's interacting with the software. So okay, so we've got that part. That's the direct staff costs. Any questions? Okay. No questions. We're going to move on to certifications and training. Now, regardless of what level of staffing that you have, there's going to be some level of training that's going to be involved. Now, if you have a Salesforce administrator, she will need to think about the certifications. Certifications can run anywhere from $200 to $1,000. So make sure that's kept in your mind when you're putting this together. How often do you need these certifications, and what those costs are. So for certifications, I'm going to say the Salesforce administrator, that is creme de la creme type of certification. We need it all. I'm just going to put the maximum amount here. So $1,000. And then classroom training. Now, whether this is for your administrator, the coordinators, or even staff members to onboard them to either your new Salesforce ecosystem or changes that are happening. We just did a session on data phishing and cybersecurity, and we talked a lot about how important it was to communicate with staff about what they should do, what they shouldn't do. Same thing goes with Salesforce. You want to not only train people when you launch Salesforce or your AMS, but you also want to continue that training and make sure best practices are being done. That way you're correcting bad behavior, bad habits, but you're also, it's all about keeping that ecosystem healthy. It's like if you have a flu outbreak and you want to be able to sure that person gets the vaccine and everyone's healthy, same kind of concept with the ecosystem. Keep your system healthy. Now, I am going to say for an organization, we're going to use a mid-sized organization, 5 leadership people, 5 managers, 4 marketing people, 4 membership staff, and then membership services in terms of like call center or receptionists. But I'm going to say roughly for that number of people for training, you want to think about, perhaps I'm going to put 4,000 in here. Great. So my total cost for certification training here is $5,000. And again, these numbers are just kind of, they're based on just industry research, what we've seen with our clients. So again, this is definitely going to be different for you. Let's move on down. One more thing about certifications and training. So there's a lot of training out there that Salesforce has to offer. Trailhead has a great videos, great blogs, great articles. And if you're that type of learner that can do self-learning and go through those, great. There are a lot of companies out there as well that does generic Salesforce training kind of in a classroom environment. That is another option. And then the third option is having something more customized where either internally or you bring in a third party to help with that training that's customized to your specific Salesforce instance. Okay, let's move on. Now let's talk about keeping this database healthy and keeping the wheels moving. There are different types of support that your software provider may offer. Now, so whether it's Salesforce, Nimble, Fontiva, each one will offer a different type of support package, and that pricing can vary. Now, specifically for Salesforce, they offer, the cost varies based on your licensing cost. So that can be anywhere from 2 to 5%. There's no solid number there. So we're going to assume that a mid-sized organization that we're working with, let's say that their licensing cost is $88,000 a year. I am just going to put that number in here. And it's going to calculate based on the higher end of 5% of what that annual cost is going to be, which is $4,400. Now, I will get into a little bit later. We'll talk about the differences between Salesforce Premier versus consultants versus having an extended team on your side. So we'll get into all of those differences later. But so this here also anticipated coverage, contract overage. Let's say that you need more help than you anticipated than what this Salesforce Premier Services offers. Then if you've already had experience with that, you want to just simply put those numbers in here and it will calculate it for you. I'm going to leave it blank and just assume that we are that this organization is it's fine with the contract that they've had. Either they haven't used it enough or they've decided to cap it at that and they've been very budget conscious. So we'll leave that one at that. Now let's go down to the consultant costs. Just like staff costs, consultants have a labor fee as well. So here, if you have consultants already on staff, already retained, then you definitely want to input this here. So you've got by contract, let's say you're using them 50 hours a month and your average cost, consultants can run anywhere from $175 to $250 per hour. I'm just going to put in 200 and this is going to calculate my annual cost. Keep in mind, I'm not talking about disruption yet. This is just what I have to keep Salesforce running in the customization and the integrations and all of that. So if I have a consultant, I've hired them for 50 hours a month, my annual cost is 120K. So all of this good information, let's hope, in the land of Excel magic, should show up in your summary page. And let me make this a little bigger for you. So here, again, this is a cost without disruption. So here you've got your staff costs, your training, your Salesforce Premier Services, and your consultant costs. So your annual cost just to have Salesforce, not including your license fees or any other fees, user fees, is almost $405,000 if you're this specific organization. But this is a quick way for you to try to get a first glance of what's going on in your organization in terms of labor and staff costs that are going into, or in consulting costs as well. So you've got to handle, now you know what that true cost is. So let's talk a little bit now about the cost of disruption. Let me change my screen over. And let's see here. Get in a pretty mode. Okay. Oop. Okay. I love this image. I know it looks kind of crazy. This is the total cost of disruption, and Project Management Institute has this whole great article. I've got a link down there at the bottom of the screen. We'll make sure you get these slides so you can go there. And this article had so many different scenarios about what disruption does to an organization, the different departments, what's the thought process, and it shows the evolution of with everything just working the way it should, it's going smoothly to different levels of disruption. And I like this one in particular because it just shows that if something does happen, there's all sorts of factors that come in here. We're questioning skills and experience. Why didn't we catch this before? Do we have that experience to fix it? Do we have those skills to fix it? What do we do? Then we're also looking at the perceived progress. You know, leadership may be thinking, okay, great, we're fixing this problem, But in reality, the teams are working together going, we're not as going as fast as we wanted to because we're lacking either in time or skills. A lot of it is just time. This diagram also talks about the time factor, right? The time that you're taking to address a disruption. Um, is that time that's taking your team away from what you normally would be doing. So taking and trying to figure out what is that value of, if I'm not doing my normal work and I'm dealing with the disruption, that's one value, right? But then this work that I do every day still needs to get done. So do I crunch it all in a tiny amount of time, or do I give it overtime? And are all of those factors play into the humanity of it, right? Is overtime good? Is stress in, going through this process of just being on edge, is that something, how does that play into your cultural values of just kind um, of staff morale, of quality of work? It really runs the gamut. And I think this picture really talks about all of those things. So it's just not a very easy linear equation that you can do, say, okay, I spent this much time on this disruption, so it equals this much amount of value, right? There's a whole human element here that you just can't put um, a dollar amount to it. And it is truly based on cultural value of the organization and just different people, how they react to that disruption. But you gotta think about it, right? So the disruption is going to happen. It can be minor. It could be just the wrong address on an invoice, to being the invoice put in the wrong product and put in the wrong membership level, and it went out to 1,000 people. So what do you do now? So it really can run the gamut. But what I think is really important here is to do a postmortem. When you're in the thick of things of trying to fix the problem, sometimes that's not the best time to really think about what is what is going on and how do we fix this and what's the value of how this affected us financially, culturally within the organization. So after you've had the problem, definitely go back and do a postmortem with your team, not just yourself, but everyone in the organization that was affected. Bring in accounting, bring in membership, bring in marketing, whoever was affected, and ask questions like this: How did this problem affect you? Did it affect your daily work? Um, did they have the technical skills to be able to address the problem? Now that's going to be different for different people. Salesforce database administrators will really have to think if they've had that skill to fix the problem that can be complex, like Apex coding. But then a marketing person or an accounting person found a workaround. They created another invoice outside of the system, heaven forbid, but they created another invoice outside a system, took care of the member that needed that, and then came back and worked with the IT department to fix what that problem is. Also, think about the time consideration. Talked a little bit about, are you crunching everything that you need to do within an 8-hour day? Are you doing overtime? And how does that affect the person? That's a lot of stress to take on if you're pushing it into a small amount of time. But then overtime can also lead to exhaustion and burnout. So things you want to think about. And then also, think about what did you learn from this, whether it's from a technical side on the IT side of like, okay, we have our bugs and we have our fixes, or is it also communication between departments, or how things are communicated, or how just kind of how you handle the crisis communication of it all. So those are learnings that you can really take out of that. And then also, looking at that overtime in regular work hours as well. We talked a lot about that. Now, the intangible cost. So we talked a lot about. Oh, my computer is just a mind of its own today. Um, the disruption cost. Now we talked a lot about that the valuation of your hourly rate, your salary, your hourly salary. multiplying that by how much work you're putting in, and you have your number. You have that when it comes to disruption, you do have that cost. But what is hard to evaluate and put a dollar figure on again is that the intangibles. How is it affecting your staff and organization? How is it affecting your members? Um, how what is the culture that it starts creating? Is it duplicative work and confusion? Is there animosity towards Salesforce? Yeah, and then people start not having confidence in it and finding workarounds, and that degrades the whole ecosystem. So all of those things you've got to think about and say, okay, there is a value to that. I may not be able to put a number to it, but these are important things to consider. And I think that is, I think you'll find that leadership nowadays are, they do care. They want to know. Of course, they want to know what the implications are in terms of how does it affect our members or donors. But they also want to know that their staff, who are critical and crucial to making the organization run, are also taken care of. So those are things that should be brought to light. Now let's go to, I'll go back to my screen for with the Excel, and we can talk a little bit more about that. Let's see here. There we go. Okay. Here is the Excel. So we talked a little bit about this. So you can put quantities here. This is completely, you can use that same formula and you can come up with that number. But then again, know that a lot of it is going to be intangible that you can communicate. But this is just kind of a placeholder for you. Now, the big question is, we've got these good calculations. Now, how do I save? You've only got X number in your budget, and you've got to make the most out of them. Now, let's talk a little bit about this third sheet. This is the cost savings. I'll make it a little larger for you. Okay. So here under staff, what this is telling me right now is just how much my annual spend is by the type of resource that's helping me on my Salesforce ecosystem. So here for the hourly rate and the benefits, this is actually pulling from the data that you already put into the other spreadsheet. So if you noticed here, this will be pulling from this spreadsheet that you put in. And what it's going to tell me is this is the hourly cost with benefits. And then it's going to add the training and certifications. And then what's going to happen here is tell me what my annual cost is going to be. Now, this is where I told you we talk a little bit about Salesforce Premier Support and what the difference is with consultants or having an extended team. So we talked about how there's not an hourly rate, it's based on licenses. You don't have to pay benefits, and you don't have to pay for anyone to be trained or certified, because that's their job, to keep their own employees trained and certified to deliver best-in-class services to you as the customer. Now, we put in here what the annual rate is for that. Now, what I want to make sure that you understand, what are the differences? And we will send out, when we reply back to you guys with this recording and this spreadsheet, we will also share with you this chart that we have. Key differences. So Salesforce, when you give them a call, if you've got a contract with them for Premier Support, you got a problem, you call them and you get through. You'll get to someone that you've probably never talked to before, but they know Salesforce. And you explain to them your problem, and they'll be able to give you very high-level advisory guidance. They'll say, okay, have you tried to fix, maybe your report's not working. They can say, oh, have you tried changing the filters and sharing settings and whatnot on it? That's the very high level. They're not actually going to touch your system. They're just going to give you ways that you can troubleshoot. So that troubleshooting is on your own. When you hire a consultant or you hire another third party to be your extended team, That advisory support is taken to another level. You've got the advisory support and then the actual work that's being done to solve that problem. So you get the support. You're not having to worry about, oh gosh, now I have to dive into something I don't know how to do, or I don't have time to do. And a lot of time is about time. But when you hire a team to, like a consultant and third party, that's their job. Their job is to identify what the problem is, come up with that solution, and make that solution work for you. So that's a big difference in support. And then the cost. We talked a little bit about that. So let's go up here. Now, consultants usually can cost anywhere from, we talked about 175 to $250 an hour. This actually is pulling from the spreadsheet earlier that where you put in your own cost for what your consultants are. So some consultants anywhere from 175 to 250. That's here. If you go with a company like Aplusify, who has a unique subscription model that helps our customers out, we have a very low rate at $60 an hour, and we work very differently in terms of how we supply our team to work on your behalf. And we can, if you're interested in that, we can definitely talk about that a little bit more offline. But just to give you a sense of what that comparison is in terms of the actual dollar amount. And then here also, I put in the number of hours. Let's say it's 50 hours a month. And we wanted to make sure we were comparing apples to apples. Now these two columns here, definitely comparing apples to apples. Salesforce support, Salesforce Premier Support Services, a little bit different. So that's why I wanted to make sure we go through this little chart down here. Now, also the other thing with Salesforce Premier Support, that's a mouthful. Another thing that happens there is that they really don't have a lot of flexibility. Again, they're very general with the help that they're providing you. They don't know your specific instance. They don't know about all the APIs, all the customization that you've done to your system. So there's only so much that they can do. And so much advice you can do. When you've got a consultant or a third party, they're evolving with you. They're learning your system, learning what your needs are, what you're trying to achieve. So it's very much more custom work. And then responsiveness. Now, when you call Salesforce Premier Support, you are subject to whatever the call support volume is. So that you're kind of wait in line. If you call them at the right time of day and nothing's going on, maybe not around a release date, you can be lucky and get pretty quick help. When you've got a consultant, you've got faster response time, because our job as consultants is to be responsive to you. It is to meet what your needs are. So you have more direct access to consultants and in other third parties. And scalability. And that kind of goes back to what I was talking around, the flexibility. Salesforce can only do this. That's all, they're a large organization, and that's how their support services are built. They can only do what's in this world. Now, when you're working with consultants and third party, depending on what their skill levels are, what talent they've got, you're able to change that scope of work and do a lot more and get a lot more input. So a little bit of the difference. Now, this can definitely be a cost savings to you, right? So there's a couple of ways I would look at this. We are not saying get rid of your staff. That is definitely not what we want to do. Staff is important because they know the organization, the processes, your business vision, those objectives. That's very important. We cannot do our work without that. So there's always going to be that staff cost element that you're going to have in there. But what we are saying is that whether it's a disruption seems like the easiest way to say you need additional hands, but it doesn't have to be. It can be the everyday work of customizing, of integrations, where you need more technical assistance or you just need time. And how do you get that without having to hire an entire staff member that has to go through a recruiting process, training. Now you're responsible for their certifications and everything. So you may not need a full body that's in-house that can meet your needs of managing your ecosystem. So think about supplementing that with consultants or extended teams. Now, consultants can come in and it may be at a higher rate and they're working more project based. And that's a lot of reasons why their hourly rate is a lot more expensive is because they're tasked with coming in and working on a project. So they know that they're going to learn your system, they're going to do whatever that scope of work is going to be, but when that project is done, then they're going away. So if you need to engage them at a later date, you may have to start that whole learning curve again, which is fine, and that's what consultants do. Um, when you look at an extended team where you've got bodies that are actually part of your staff, they feel like they're part of your staff, right? But you don't have to worry about benefits, you don't have to worry about training, certification. That's all on the company that provides the extended team. They are responsible for doing all of that. And then also allowing you to tap into a whole range of skills, knowledge, certifications that's going to help you. And having them on a continuous basis reduces that learning curve, right? When your staff comes on, you've got this learning curve that goes up and it kind of steadies and keeps going. Consultants kind of go up and down based on your project. But what you want to do with extended teams, it's replicates very much like a staff member. They've got the learning curve, but then as they become and stay a part of your team, they don't have the ups and downs of starting, stopping, starting, stopping. So you've got someone that knows your system, has the skills, um, and again, that's just more profitable for you. The other way to think about it as well is if you have staff that's overtasked, they already have a full plate, and if they need to worry about a new release that's coming out that may affect the system, how many hours will it take for them to actually put that patch or that release into effect? Um, if they're not familiar with the release, it may take them twice as long as someone who knows the ins and outs of doing that. So, would you rather pay, let's say, for example, here, let's say there's a task, it takes a release and it takes 2 hours. It's going to cost this staff member $260 to get that done. However, on the extended team or on a consultant can do that in half the amount of time. And so you're actually doing a cost savings there because then your staff member can give the guidance, let the consultants and third parties do their thing, and you're getting it done faster. And the staff can focus on other projects and other things that they need to work on in their core group. So those are ways that you can use this spreadsheet to help you figure out what are some of those cost savings, what are your costs going to be, and hopefully it's just to give you a starting point to start thinking about those things. um, I will make sure you all get all of this. If you have any questions, I'll put up our contact, but if you have any questions, definitely feel free to put that here in the chat section. Happy to address those, but I will put up our, as soon as, let's see here. Here is our contact information. If you have any questions or want to go through all of that, and then somehow my screen has gone away. There we go. I will give you this. You can definitely contact us by email, by phone, or online. And if you don't have any questions, then I thank you very much for joining us today. Definitely stay tuned. We are working on our 2021 webinar schedule, and we'll have that out to you soon. So take a look and keep your eyes open. Have a great holiday and stay safe and healthy.